Records show we are returning to the case of State versus Eric Boyd in case 112657.
Yeah, I just want to put on the record that this morning, before court started, I was out in the hall and saw somebody that I recognized, and I waved and smiled, and about that time realized that that was a juror, and so then I dropped my head. So I did not talk to her, but I just want to put that on the record that I did wave and smile at a juror.
And we're putting things on the record. I do want to put on the record that yesterday I got on the elevator with one of the jurors, didn't realize who they were, and asked them which floor. And when we got off on the first floor, I said, after you. So
I think this is a lot of that.
I just wanted to make sure we're both on the record.
All right. All right. I think you're cross-examined.
Yes, sir.
Stay ready for the jury.
Do we want him out first? Do we want Mr. Thomas to be on the witness stand before the jury gets here?
However, security wants to handle it. You want to bring him in and see? All right. We're going to do that.
Oh, also, on the record, yesterday I had identified Mr. Thomas's wallet as Exhibit 129. We've already used Exhibit 129, so I would move to change that to Exhibit 445. And so Exhibit 445 will be a picture of the wallet, pens, cigarette lighter, coins, bliss stick, and ID that Mr. Thomas identified as his.
Any objection?
No objection to that.
There's the diagram of the house.
Bring the jury in. You can be seated. Stay where you talk. Yes, sir. Where you talk.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask you again, if anyone, from the time you left the jury room, from the time you left the courtroom yesterday until this moment, if anyone has tried to engage you in conversation about this case and talk to you about it, please raise your hand. No one is raising a hand. If any information of any kind has been sent to you or distributed to you that purports to talk or give information about this case, if that has happened, please raise your hand. No one's raising a hand. All right, Mr. Frazier, you can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. (2316) Chipman Street. Show you the diagram, I believe. Are you familiar with the layout of this house? Correct. See it like this. All right, so just so I'm clear and understand, this bedroom right here, which says north bedroom, correct? This the front room? Correct. Okay. This is Mr. Davidson's bedroom, correct? Correct. This south bedroom, right up here, this is Mr. Cobbins, where he is staying with Miss Coleman. Is that correct? Correct. All right. And you're in here in the living room, right here. Is that correct? Correct. All right. Now, this is a small home. Would you agree with me? Yes. And it would be rather easy if you were in, say, the living room to hear if something was going on in the bedroom, the front bedroom, correct?
I mean, like if the TV and the radio is not on, yes.
Yeah, but it would be easy to hear something. And let me just make sure I understand this. While you were present, Chris Newsom was here on this sun porch.
Correct.
He wasn't raped on the sun porch.
Not that I know of.
Not that you saw.
Correct.
All right? Shannon wasn't raped on this sun porch.
No.
Not that you saw. She was taken into this front bedroom,
Correct.
and you don't know what happened in there.
No, I wasn't in there.
Let me ask you a couple of questions about Latavius Cobbins. I believe you testified yesterday that you met him in 2005, 2006, sometime like that. Is that right?
Correct.
Y'all met in Memphis?
Yes.
And When you met, how long did you all stay in Memphis where you got acquainted?
About 8 months, 9 months, something like that.
Okay, so you lived in Memphis for 8 or 9 months?
No, I lived in Memphis since 2003.
Okay, so you were living in Memphis.
Correct.
Latalvis Collins was living in Memphis.
Well, I don't know if he was living in Memphis during 2003. I didn't meet him.
I understand that. I'm talking about 2005, 2006 when you met him.
Correct.
During that period of time, he was living in Memphis.
Correct.
And y'all would, stay in touch with each other?
Yes.
Y'all would spend time together?
Yes.
Y'all would smoke blunts together?
Correct.
Y'all, did you live together during that time period?
No.
Did you ever stay over at his house?
No.
Did he ever stay over at your house?
No.
Now, at some point in time, though, y'all did travel together, correct?
Correct.
And y'all left Memphis, is that right?
Yes.
Went to Kentucky?
Correct.
All right. Why'd you go to Kentucky?
I was working at Amazon.com.
Okay, so you got a job at Amazon in Kentucky.
Correct.
And Latalvis Collins, he followed you to Kentucky, is that right?
He didn't follow me. He went as well.
He moved as well. Did y'all live together in Kentucky?
We didn't live. We wasn't living up there at the time. We was working for a labor company that was out of Memphis that was supplying workers to Amazon.com.
Okay. All right, so you're working a job out of Memphis that sent y'all to Kentucky.
Correct.
All right. And so again, were y'all living together or you had separate residences?
We were staying in, the company had set us up in hotels.
Okay, so you were staying in hotels?
Correct.
All right, but at the same time, you still spent time together, correct?
Yeah, when we wasn't working, yes.
Yeah. And y'all smoked blunts together?
Correct.
All right. And again, would you call him your best friend?
At the point in time, yeah.
Yeah, so that was your best friend. Just to be clear, you told this jury yesterday that you didn't see Latalvis Collins injure anyone on the night in question.
You said do what?
You didn't see him hurt anybody.
No, I did not.
You didn't see him rape anybody.
No, I did not.
You did say that you saw him go into the front bedroom for a minute, but not for very long, right? That's your testimony yesterday?
That he went into the front bedroom, correct?
And when you got apprehended in Kentucky, you were taken in for questioning by the police. First person they talked to was Latalvis Collins, correct?
I believe so. I wasn't
You don't know?
in the area.
Okay. Then you were brought in. Police talked to you and they asked you, did they show up in a SUV, a white colored SUV? And then, just tell us how. Tell us how. Start with Saturday afternoon. Who went and did what? And your answer to them during this interview was Saturday afternoon, Slim left out. As a matter of fact, he was gone for a good long minute. He was gone. You remember saying that?
Correct.
Then detectives asked you, do you remember a short, bald-headed, light-skinned black dude showing up over there, and he was in his own car? I think your response was, a short? They called him E. And you said, okay, yeah, I remember seeing him. Okay, you remember saying that?
Yes.
Then they asked you, do you remember a point in time where Slim and E and Rome all left together in Slim's car and E's car and you stayed there, you and Vanessa, Saturday night? And then another detective said, Saturday evening. And you said, yeah, I believe so, right?
Correct.
That's what you said. And then they say, okay, all right, at some point in time, a white SUV came back with Slim and E and Rome was driving E's car. Do you remember that? You came out the front, little sunroom porch, remember that? And you said, yeah. You remember saying that? You agreeing with that?
I don't recall saying yes to that specific question, because if you would have heard, and they said another question before that question, after that question, and I said yes.
Can I approach?
Sir?
You'll review this. This is a copy of the transcript of your interview from up in Kentucky.
Correct.
This is the section I just read to you.
Correct.
All right? And your response to that question was yeah.
But like I said, if you heard
The next, you want to talk about the next question you were asked. All right. The next question you were asked, okay, do you remember when E and Slim got out of the car and a white guy and a white girl with them, and they had blindfolds over their eyes and their hands were tied? And you said, yeah, I remember seeing them.
correct.
So again, a lot of these details in your statement and what you testified to yesterday, this is what the police were telling you, correct?
No, well, they didn't tell me that.
Well,
They
they're
asked
the
a
ones that are
question.
saying this, and you're agreeing with what they're saying, right?
They just asked a question and I gave them the answer.
Yeah, you said, yeah, you agreed with their question. And again, they talked to you after they talked to Latalis. Now, you didn't know Eric Boyd, right? I mean, you just met him that Thursday,
Correct.
all right? So prior to that Thursday, you didn't know her, you didn't run with him.
No, I did not.
And after all this went down, Eric Boyd, he didn't run from the jurisdiction,
I mean, I have no idea.
but you and Latalis did.
Run or go back to Kentucky?
You left Knoxville. And
Yes,
went to
correct.
Kentucky. One thing, again, you don't know Eric Boyd, but you do know about guns. Is that right? That's what you said yesterday, you know about guns.
I know what a gun is and I know what certain guns look like.
And Eric Boyd, on the night that this happened, he had an automatic 22.
He had a gun. I mean,
You said it was an
I
automatic.
seen him with an automatic 22 at one point in time, but I can't tell you that he had a specific gun.
And again, when you talked to those detectives back in 2007, you told them it was a revolver. Mr. Thomas, isn't it true?
Well, I guess I'm going to object. You didn't answer. I don't think. If you could state that more clearly as a question rather than a statement.
I guess I will believe if I look at, yes. Page 24. And this would be when the detectives are asking you about the gun that you had seen E with. It'd be about section 26, line 26. Your response was, I think it was a revolver.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I did say that.
So
That I
back in
think.
2007,
I
you
didn't-
said you thought it was a revolver.
That I think it was. I didn't say that it was a revolver. I said I think it was.
I think it was. Mr. Thomas, isn't it true that you and Latalis Cobbins decided to blame Eric Boyd for the crimes that you committed?
No.
You didn't plan that when you got back to Kentucky?
No, we did not.
You blamed Eric Boyd, right? You're blaming him.
I didn't blame him.
Latalis Cobbins blamed him.
I mean, I don't know if he blamed him or told him who was with him.
Yeah, Vanessa Coleman didn't blame him.
For all I know, she wasn't there with them when it all had transpired.
And LaMarcus Davidson didn't blame him.
And like I said, I wasn't there with them when it transpired, so
Mr. Thomas, you didn't care what happened to Eric Boyd back in 2007 or today. Just, I said, you didn't care what happened to Eric Boyd.
oh, you asked me, did I care what happened to him?
I'm saying you didn't care, did you?
I didn't know him, so
You didn't know. Okay. Just like you didn't care what happened to Shannon Christian.
I don't see how those two would relate to say that I didn't care about them. I mean, I didn't know them either.
Yeah. Just like when you said, fuck that white girl, she didn't mean anything to me. You
No.
said that, didn't you?
I didn't say that specifically like that. That statement was taken out of context by Detective Norman.
Okay, so the detective took that statement out of context. So again, when all this went back down in 2007 and you were charged, the state of Tennessee went for the death penalty, right? Against
Correct.
you. And you got life without parole.
Correct.
And they went after you a second time in a retrial, right?
Correct.
And you came out of that with 2 consecutive life sentences, right?
Correct.
Plus 25 years.
Correct.
And now they're offering you 50 years.
Correct.
And you've done served more than 10 of that.
Correct.
So you've basically gone from spending the rest of your life in prison to one day you're going to get out. Potentially.
Possibly.
Possibly. All right, again, testified yesterday that Chris Newsom wasn't taken off by Eric Boyd and LaMarcus Davison, which is at least one of the statements that you made in Kentucky, right?
Correct.
I think you also said in Kentucky that Eric Boyd took Mr. Newsom off by himself, correct?
Correct.
Yesterday you testified that in fact you and Eric Boyd took Mr. Newsom off.
Correct.
And I believe you testified yesterday that Chris Newsom didn't have anything in his mouth.
I said I didn't know if he did or not.
Be the kind of thing you would notice, don't you think?
I mean, I wasn't looking at him just.
You weren't looking at it. And I believe you also said that, as far as you know, LaMarcus Davidson and Talvis Cobbins didn't rape Shannon Christian in the front bedroom. While you were there, you didn't hear anything.
No, I did not.
But that LaMarcus Davidson and Eric Boyd went into the bedroom with Shannon Christian.
Correct.
You remember talking to Investigator Childress in January of 2018?
Yeah.
That was last year. And at that point in time, you told him that you don't remember seeing Eric Boyd go into that front bedroom.
Possibly.
You also testified yesterday that Eric Boyd parked across the street from the Chipman Street house, right?
Correct.
Previously, believe that he didn't park, let me just say, he didn't park in front of the house, right?
The car that the white Pontiac was not parked in front of the house. It was parked across the street.
Not parked in front of the house. And then you testified yesterday that LaMarcus Davidson drives you, Vanessa Coleman, LaTalvius Cobbins to Vincent's house, right?
Correct.
Leaving Eric Boyd behind at the house on Chipman Street with Shannon.
Correct.
Right? And again, in 2018, when you talked to Detective Childress in the law library, you told him that you had never seen Eric Boyd with Shannon.
Never seen him. I mean, I never seen him alone with her. I mean, I wasn't at the house when we left.
You also didn't see any bags taken out of her SUV, right?
Correct.
You didn't hear any noise from Shannon being raped.
No, I did not.
And LaTalvis was with you while you were there at the house when you left, right?
Yes.
Mr. Cobbins left with you.
We all left.
Which means, Mr. Thomas, that you had to be there when Shannon was raped. I believe you also said that you didn't tell the authorities back in 2007 about what you testified here yesterday that you witnessed because you didn't want to get drug into all this.
Correct.
Mr. Thomas, we've already talked about how small 2316 Chipman Street is, right?
Correct.
The very beginning of this. Shannon Christian is brutally raped and murdered within feet of you. You didn't hear anything?
No, I didn't. Like I said, I did not hear nor see her being raped.
You didn't hear her sodomized?
I just told you I didn't.
You didn't hear when her lip was torn, when she was orally raped?
I'm sorry. Do you want me to keep on answering the same question?
You didn't hear when her lip was torn, when she was orally raped?
I already said that I did not hear nor see her being raped.
By your best friend, Metallis Cottons. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Chris Newsom. Your testimony yesterday was that Marcus Davidson told you to go with Eric Boyd and that you went with him and took Chris off.
Correct.
You don't stay on the couch like what you previously told the police. You go with Mr. Boyd, right?
Correct.
You get in the white SUV,
Correct.
Shannon's car.
Correct.
He's driving, Mr. Boyd's driving.
Correct.
Y'all go to the loading dock, right? Drive off to a loading dock?
Yes.
All right. You refuse to get out of the SUV, right?
Correct.
Eric Boyd takes Mr. Newsom over to some bushes?
Yes, correct.
That's right. At that point in time, Mr. Newsom's legs aren't bound.
Not that I know of.
Not that you see. You sit back at the car, right?
Correct.
You hear 3 shots.
I seen
3
the
shots,
3,
that's
yes.
right. All right, you see 3 shots. Then you see Mr. Boyd pulling the body over towards the tracks, right?
Correct.
Mr. Boyd comes back. Is that right?
Correct.
Somewhere, somehow, comes up with a gas can that you hadn't seen up to then, right?
Like I said, it was inside the back seat. I didn't look into the
I
back
believe you
seat.
said you weren't sure where it
Could you
was.
please move closer to the microphone? Some people are having trouble hearing you.
I believe you said you weren't sure if it was in the back seat. You don't know where it came from, this gas can.
Correct.
All right. Mr. Thomas, you were present during your first 2 trials, right? During your 2 trials?
Yes, I was.
You heard Dr. Volushnik testify, right?
Correct.
You know that Chris was raped a couple of hours before he was murdered.
I mean, that's what she said, yes.
Mr. Thomas, don't you know the families and us know how Chris and Shannon died?
Correct.
I believe what they were wanting to know was the circumstances of how they died. And I guess just one more thing before I go, Mr. Thomas. You understand that your deal with the state called for truthful testimony?
And that's what I have given.
We're just going to have to be something for the jury to decide after they hear the rest of the state's proof in this case, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, I'm going to ask you a little bit about the statement that you gave in Kentucky. You've had a chance to listen to your recorded statement.
Yes, I have.
I asked you about, I don't even know if you need the transcript, but did you tell, when you talked to the detectives up in Kentucky, did you tell them what you observed whenever Mr. Davidson, Mr. Boyd, and Mr. Coppins returned?
Yes.
What did you tell them? You can pull the microphone up. What did you tell the detectives you observed when they returned?
I told them that when they came into the house, that Collins had came to me and he was telling me like, come on, it's time to go. And I'm asking him what's going on. And then that's when Miss Christian walked in and Mr. Davidson was behind her and walked her into the front bedroom.
And who came in next?
And then Mr. Newsom was inside the sunroom, and Mr. Boyd was right there as well.
And that's what you told them?
Yes.
Now, what did you and Mr. Collins, did the two of you get together and decide what you were going to tell the detectives before you were arrested?
No, we did not.
What was your mindset when you went into the interview? What were you planning on doing?
I was just planning on telling them, I mean, as much as I can without trying to incriminate myself and pull myself into what all had happened.
Why was that?
Because, I mean, I didn't do anything to warrant me being arrested and charged with something that I didn't do.
Also, did you tell the detectives that they asked you why couldn't you leave?
Yes, they asked me,
And what did you tell them?
and I told them they wouldn't let me leave.
And who did you tell them to let you leave?
That Mr. Boyd and Mr. Davidson would not let me leave.
And who did you tell them left in the car together whenever involving Mr. Newsom?
Well, I told them that Mr. Boyd and Mr. Newsom had left.
And who did you tell them came back?
Mr. Boyd.
Now, do you know what time the carjacking happened?
No, I do not.
Do you know what, if any, crimes Mr. Boyd or Mr. Davidson or Mr. Collins committed against Shannon and Chris before they got to the house?
No, I do not.
Do you know if they were raped before they got to the house?
No, I do not.
Do you know what crimes Mr. Boyd committed against Mr. Newsom there at the train tracks before he shot him? As
No.
far as whether or not he raped him again?
I mean, no, because it was off into a stand of trees that were behind the building, but across from the drainage ditch.
And you had told us about the bindings. Remind us again about the bindings that Mr. Newsom had on his arms or his hands.
Well, I know he had something that was tying his hands behind his back, and he had something over his face. It wasn't a bandana, but it was something else.
And the bindings, where did those bindings come from for his hands?
There was some from the floral pattern drapes or sheets that Miss Freeman had given him.
Now, back at the house, did you see Mr. Collins rape Miss Christian?
No, I did not.
Based upon the evidence from the trial, you know that he did?
Yes.
Did you see Mr. Davidson rape Miss Newsom?
No, I did.
Miss Christian?
No, I did not.
Based upon the evidence from the trial, you know that he did?
Yes.
And did you see Mr. Boyd rape Miss Christian?
No, I did not.
You don't know what took place in that room?
No.
Was Mr. Collins with you the entire time?
No, he was not.
And
Can you recross? No, you're not. You can. The deputy just took it.
Jody Long.
Who is this, Joe?
Jody Long.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Please have a seat.
Give us your name, please, ma'am.
Jody Long,
How do you spell your first name?
Jody.
Long, you live here in Knoxville?
I do.
Back in 2007, did you live here in Knoxville?
Yes, sir.
Back in 2007, did you know a fellow by the name of Vincent Wernemont?
Yes, sir.
How'd you know him?
He was somebody that I got drugs from.
In January of 2007, were you acquainted with him during that month of 2007?
Yes, sir.
And how were you introduced to him, if you recall?
He was a friend of mine's godson.
In the early part of January 2007, did Mr. Wernemont ask you to do something?
He did.
What did he ask you to do?
To give some friends of his a ride to Kentucky.
And where were you when you got this request?
I was at home, at my mother's house.
And who's, where's your mother live?
Oh, it's 6906 Seaver Drive.
And what's her name?
Wanda Long.
Okay. And when you got that request, what did you do?
I got up and got dressed and went over to Vince's house.
And where was Vince's house, do you remember?
Whittle Springs.
Willow Springs area? And what did you do then when you got there?
I got myself fixed and got, I followed him to the gas station, and we went from the gas station over to someone's house to pick his friends up.
And you recall which house that you went to, or whose house it was?
I know whose house it was, but I don't know where it
Whose
was at.
house?
It was Susan Hill's house.
If I may approach.
Yes.
Show you a photograph in marked exhibit 299. You recognize that photograph? And who is that?
That's Susan Hill.
And who was at Susan Hill's house?
The three individuals that I was supposed to take to Kentucky
And whose request?
at Vince's request.
And did you know these individuals?
No, sir.
And how many, so there were three individuals? Males, females,
2 males and a female.
black, white,
Black.
all three?
All three black.
And when you got to Miss Hill's house, did you begin to take these individuals toward Kentucky?
I did. We picked them up. They loaded the car up with their stuff, and we headed out to Kentucky.
And you did not know these people?
No, sir.
You say you got, somebody got some gas?
Vince put gas in my
Put
car.
gas in your car. What were you to receive for taking these folks to
A
Kentucky?
couple of morphine pills, some crack, and so a little bit of cash.
Now, on the way to Kentucky, did you know where in Kentucky you were going?
No, I just followed the directions that the gentleman in the back gave me.
Okay. And the passengers that you had, where were they seated in your car?
I had Vanessa in the front, and the guys were in the back.
You say Vanessa, is that who you now know to be Vanessa
Vanessa,
Coleman?
yes.
And the two black gentlemen in the back of the car, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
About how long did it take you to drive to Kentucky?
About 4.5 hours.
Was there conversation during that ride to Kentucky?
A lot of it from me, but no, not really. The guys kind of talked amongst themselves in the back. I couldn't hear them. They're very low, and of course she was in the front and she didn't have a lot to say.
And when you got to Kentucky, do you remember what town you went to?
No, sir. I don't remember anything other than him telling me where to go.
And did you go to where he told you to go? Mm-hmm. And what'd you do when you got there?
We got into a little town and we went to the Wendy's. We had stopped before and got gas in between and got some drinks and snacks and stuff. And then when we got into Kentucky, we stopped at the Wendy's and went through the drive-thru. And then he directed me on to the house that I dropped them at.
And you remember the color of the house?
It was a little white house.
And when you got to that house, what happened?
They got out, I unloaded the trunk, or I helped them. I was putting stuff on the porch as they were carrying it in, and I went back to Knoxville.
Did you have any conversation with any of those folks about what they were doing in Knoxville, while they were in Knoxville?
No, sir.
What they did in Knoxville?
No, sir.
Now, you say you dropped them off?
Mm-hmm.
Did you return to Knoxville?
I did.
Same day?
Same day, that very evening, I was back by, I think it was 10 or 11 because the news was on.
After you got back, a day or two later, did you see anything on the news that caused you some concern?
That night,
That
I saw
night?
something on the news that caused me some concern.
And what was that?
They were looking for those individuals that I had just dropped off.
Did you see their pictures?
Yeah, I think, I'm really not 100% sure on the pictures, but I'm sure there were some mug shots up there, but I don't really remember 100%.
And once you saw that, what did you do, if anything?
Oh, I was mad. I told Vince that, how dare you put me in a situation like this, and I was, already out of my mind anyways, and I just kind of freaked out, went home.
And at some point, did you talk to law enforcement about what you had done?
When I was on probation for some other charges, and they came to CAP and talked to me.
And before we put that picture back in, if you could just write on the back, Susan, that you identified in that. Susan Hill, is that her name? If you would care to write that on there.
Susan Hill?
Yeah, just underneath that sticker would be fine. That's what.
Cross-examination.
And just one question. I know you referenced you were on CAP. That's the Community Alternatives to Prison program, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's it.
No further questions from the statement.
Okay, you can step down.
Thanks.
Ms. Freeman? For the record, we'd like to move into evidence 299.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Let it be received.
Maybe you're just going to go right up there. Yes, ma'am. Just right up there next to the judge.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat.
It's going to be real quick. You want to scoot up a little bit closer. Now, you do not want to be here.
I do not.
You're only here because you've been personally served with the subpoena.
Right.
If I can direct your attention back to January 2007, at the time, did you know a person by the name of LaMarcus Davidson, better nicknamed Sling?
Yes.
Had you sold him some furniture?
Furniture, some bedspreads, curtains, things of that nature.
Did he owe you some money?
He did.
And were you expecting him to pay you that money?
I was.
Do you recall why you needed that money?
Oh yeah, I needed to pay my KUB bill.
And do you recall where you were living at the time?
Yes, I was living, I moved from Chahawi Street until Washington Ridge Apartments.
Now, whenever you moved from Chahawi to Washington Ridge, did you have like a lot of furniture or something you had to move?
Yes, I had a house full of furniture.
Who helped you to move, if you recall?
It was Slim and Daphne and George and Romeo.
Is Romeo, do you know him as Latalis Collins? You may not.
I just know it was Slim's brother.
Slim's brother. And so when you say Rome, is this Rome here?
Yes.
And for the record, that's going to be Exhibit 292.
Okay.
Okay. And so when they helped you to move, what the furniture that you sold Mr. Davidson, did you sell that to him before they helped you to move?
Yes.
And the do you recall what bedding it was that you gave to Mr. Davidson or sold to Mr. Davidson?
Bedspread and curtains.
I can approach and show you Exhibit 404. Do you recognize this pattern?
Yes.
And what do you recognize this pattern to be?
A curtain.
Was it? Did you give this to Mr. Davidson?
Mm-hmm. The pillow, shams.
So it was a complete.
Yeah, it was a complete set.
All right. So you were. For the record, we're going to stick to moving to evidence exhibit 404.
No objection.
Collect.
Let it be received.
So you said you were expecting Mr. Davidson to pay you your money.
Yes.
Did he ever show up that night?
No, he did not show up that night.
If you were to look at a aerial map of Washington Ridge Apartments, would you be able to point out approximately where your apartment was?
I can try.
Okay. And if you can't, that's okay. All right, I'm trying to orient you here. I'm looking here at exhibit, is that 428 at the top? And if this is Washington Pike here, and if this
Washington Ridge.
Washington Ridge, and if all of this is the complex.
Okay, well, if he went up this way.
What I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna turn it around so the jury can see it, okay?
Okay.
So if this is Washington Ridge here, I'm sorry, if this is Washington Pike,
You enter the apartments right here. Go to there, up to there, around this way, and I lived somewhere up in there.
up in there,
Yeah.
and you see that black marker there?
Yes.
Can you mark that, please?
What?
Just, yeah, the path, yes ma'am.
Somewhere up in there.
For the record, we'd like to move to evidence exhibit 428.
No objection. Let it be received.
And so you said that he never came that night.
No, ma'am.
That's witness.
You pass the witness. Cross-examine.
Yes, Your Honor. So, Miss Jones, you were familiar with Slim and his brother Romeo and George, correct?
Yes.
George went by G.
Yes.
And I know that Saturday, Slim was supposed to come by and pay you some money, correct?
Correct.
And he never did show up.
No.
Didn't you try to contact him on the phone
I
early
did.
Sunday morning?
I contacted him also, well, I guess it was early Sunday morning. It was Saturday when I went to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
When I woke up, I tried to contact him. It was like 4 in the morning or
4 in the
something
morning.
like that.
Yes, ma'am, something like that. So you tried to contact him early. And at some point in time, you actually went over to Chipman Street later on Sunday, correct?
I did.
And you, in fact, saw G walking, did you not?
I did.
Where'd you see G?
Well, Rhonda had called me down to her house to pick up some furniture, and I was sitting in my car, not furniture, some plates, my grandmama's china.
Okay.
And so I was sitting in my car, and G walked past, and I thought it was Slim, but it was not, because he had a hoodie on, and I didn't recognize him really until he walked past.
And which direction was he heading?
He was heading down the street on Chipman toward the railroad tracks.
Okay. And that was on Sunday morning?
Sunday morning.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. But this would have been, just, I know a follow-up question that's going to be asked, this would have been around closer to noon, is that correct?
Right.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
And so when you saw that it was G, did you keep going?
No, I was still in my car,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
I didn't. I sat there because I was waiting to get the dishes.
And let's see here. Do you remember what Miss Dibs was like? Do you recognize Exhibit 297?
It's Rhonda.
Is this Rhonda? Let's write, I'm going to write Rhonda at the top, okay? And where did she live in relationship to Mr. Davidson's house?
She was about 3 or 4 houses down on the same side.
I'd like to move Exhibit 297 in as evidence.
No objection.
And so you said that while you were there, Rhonda's giving you some dishes. I think, did the dishes belong to your grandma?
Yeah, Rhonda was there and my cousin, and they lived together, and my cousin had left, and he left the dishes.
And so did you get your dishes from Rhonda?
I did.
And once you got your dishes from Rhonda, what did you then do?
I left.
And did you try to go home?
Yes, I did.
What happened when you tried to go home?
The train had stopped, so I couldn't go down Cherry Street the way that I normally would go. And so I turned around and went another way.
And so I know as you sit here today, you don't know what time this was, but we know that it is whenever the train was stopped on Cherry Street.
Yeah, I know it was between 11:30 to 12:30 because I had a date and I was trying to get there.
Okay, so between 11:30 and 12:30. Now also, let me go back to the phone call that you made to Mr. Davidson. So you make the phone call to Mr. Davidson, that's going to be Sunday morning, you believe around 4 a.m.?
Yeah,
Did he answer?
he did.
And what did you notice about his voice?
Heavy breathing. He talked normally to me, but he was breathing heavy.
And what did you tell him?
And I told him, he had told me he was going to come over there and bring me the money. And I told him I needed it by Monday because I had to pay my bill. But he was breathing heavy. And I said to him, you need to calm down because you're breathing so heavy. And I know he had some kind of problem. I can't remember what it was. And I said, you sound like you're exerting yourself and you need to calm down.
And then that's Sunday, so then you go over there between 11:30 and 12:30, Sunday morning.
Right,
Have that conversation with Rhonda.
right.
You see Mr. Thomas walking on Chipman Street.
G.
Yes, I'm sorry. All right, so you go home. Do you go back over there?
I went back the next morning
And so that's gonna be Monday morning.
The
And why do
Monday
you go
morning.
back the next morning?
to get my money.
Because you have to pay your KUV bill.
Right, that's why I went back.
When you go back Monday morning, do you notice anybody?
No, the house would look like, as I pulled up, and I noticed all the windows were down, and the blinds was down, which that was unusual, because of whatever condition he had, they always kept the windows up. And no cars were around. And I said, it's like a ghost town. And then I looked down the street, and I seen police officers, and they were looking in the drain?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So let me show you on Exhibit 27. If I can show you Exhibit 27. If this here is Chipman Street and this is Glider, do you see on Exhibit 27 where you saw the police looking in a drain?
Yeah, right in there.
Okay. And let's mark that. You want to just mark an X on Exhibit 27 where you saw the police looking like in a drain? And after you saw that, what did you then do?
I left.
Did you ever see Mr. Davidson?
No,
And say that you never got your money for your furniture?
no.
Thank you.
Nothing further.
You can step down, thank you. Any objection to her leaving?
No, you're not.
You're free to go.
That looks good. Ethel. Jones. Miss Jones now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the next witness is likely to be lengthy, so we'll take a quick break here. Just please go to your court office. All right, we'll take a very brief recess.